Crescent Hill was the kind of neighborhood you see on a postcard: immaculate white fences, perfectly manicured green lawns, and neighbors who waved but kept their distance. When I moved into my new house on Maple Drive, escaping the wreckage of my Chicago divorce, I craved that kind of picturesque peace. The silence was a balm. The air felt clean. But then there was Tom Riley, my neighbor from across the street. He was a quiet man in his 40s who worked from home and smiled just a little too often. He helped me carry in my boxers, assured me the neighborhood was safe, and his gaze lingered just a second too long when I thanked him. I brushed it off, eager to settle into my new, quiet life. The first few weeks were blissfully uneventful. But then, small, unsettling things started happening. My mailbox would be left wide open. The latch on my back gate would be undone. A strange prickling sensation of being watched would follow me around my own home. I tried to ignore it, telling myself I was just jumpy, still raw from the divorce. Then the text messages started, from a number I didn't recognize. The first one read, "You looked beautiful in that blue dress today." My blood ran cold. I had worn that dress inside my house, behind drawn curtains. No one could have seen me, except maybe Tom, whose house had a direct line of sight into my living room. I blocked the number, my heart thumping against my ribs. I tried to tell myself it was a wrong number, a bizarre coincidence. But the feeling of being watched intensified. A few days later, another message came through from a new number. "Don't close the blinds. I like the light on your face." That's when the fear really took hold. It was no longer a coincidence. It was a violation. My sanctuary, my new beginning, was being invaded. I went to the police. They were polite, but dismissive. "We'll look into it," they said, a phrase that felt like a pat on the head. Tom stopped his friendly waves. His smiles vanished, but I could still feel his eyes on me, a constant, unnerving presence from across the street. The quiet of the neighborhood no longer felt peaceful. It felt menacing, like the silence before a storm. I was a prisoner in my own home, afraid to open my curtains, afraid to step outside. Desperate for a sense of security, I installed security cameras around the property. For a brief moment, I felt a sliver of control return, but the next morning, that hope was shattered. I woke to find the cameras ripped from their mounts, the wires hanging loose and frayed like severed nerves. It was a clear message: you are not safe. You cannot hide. That night, sleep was impossible. My mind raced, replaying every interaction, every glance. Around 3 a.m., I crept to the window and peeked through a crack in the blinds. My heart leaped into my throat. There, in the pale glow of the street lamp, stood Tom. He was in his own yard, perfectly still, his head tilted as he stared directly at my window. Not at the house, but at my window. It was as if he knew I was watching him. I stumbled back, my breath catching in a silent scream. I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911 again, my voice a frantic whisper. But by the time the police cruiser rolled down Maple Drive, he was gone. His yard was empty, as if he'd never been there. The officers found nothing. They gave me that same look, a mix of pity and skepticism. "Are you sure you saw him?" one asked. I felt like I was going crazy, like he was gaslighting me through sheer terror, and everyone was buying it. The nightmare escalated. A week later, I found my car tires slashed. Deep, angry scratches scarred the lock on my front door. And then, there was the box. A small, plain cardboard box left on my doorstep. My hands trembled as I brought it inside. Part of me screamed not to open it, to throw it away. But another, more desperate part needed to know. Inside was a single flash drive. My stomach twisted into a knot of dread. Against every rational instinct, I plugged it into my laptop. The screen flickered to life, and hundreds of photos filled the folder. It was me. Me sleeping in my bed, the camera positioned from an angle I couldn't place. Me cooking in my kitchen, me showering, my breath hitched. Then I saw the video files. My cursor hovered, shaking, over one titled Night. I clicked. It was my bedroom, dark and still. The view was shaky, as if filmed by hand. The camera zoomed in slowly, chillingly, on my face as I slept, completely unaware. I let out a strangled cry and slammed the laptop shut, shoving it away from me as if it were on fire. The violation was absolute. He hadn't just been watching from across the street. He had been in my house. Armed with this terrifying evidence, I called the police again. This time, they had to take me seriously. They finally searched Tom's house, but they found nothing. Not a single camera, not a laptop, no evidence connecting him to the flash drive. As they were leaving, Tom stood in his doorway, a picture of calm concern. He looked at the officers and said softly, with that same unnerving smile, "Maybe she's just anxious after her divorce. It can be a stressful time." And they seemed to believe him. They left, and I was alone again, with the knowledge that my tormentor was smarter, more careful than I could have imagined. That night, I slept with a kitchen knife under my pillow, every creak of the old house sending a jolt of adrenaline through me. The days that followed were a blur of pure dread. I barely ate. I didn't sleep. I just waited. Then, one night, I heard it. Not a creak, but a definite footstep in the hallway downstairs. Then another. Someone was in my house. My blood turned to ice. Clutching the phone, I hid in my bedroom closet and whispered to the 911 operator, "Someone's in my house. 12 Maple Drive." The doorknob to my bedroom began to turn. Slowly, silently. The door swung open, revealing a dark figure, a man dressed head to toe in black, wearing a mask and gloves. Adrenaline took over. I burst from the closet, swinging the knife I'd been clutching. I felt it connect, grazing his arm. He grunted and lunged at me. We struggled, a chaotic mess of flailing limbs and frantic breaths. I screamed, a raw, terrified sound, just as the wail of sirens pierced the night. The intruder shoved me hard against the wall and fled, disappearing into the darkness just as flashing blue and red lights painted the room. The police followed a trail of muddy footprints from my back door directly to Tom Riley's shed. This time, they didn't need a warrant to force it open. Inside was his entire operation. A wall of surveillance monitors, high-powered listening devices, and stacks of notebooks detailing my daily schedule down to the minute. There were even strands of my hair taped 2 pages, labeled with dates. They had everything they needed to arrest him, but Tom was gone. He had vanished without a trace. The weeks that followed were a slow, painful process of trying to reclaim my life. I started therapy. I tried to convince myself the nightmare was over. Then, a text from an unknown number buzzed on my phone. 3 words, miss me. I checked my new porch camera footage, a fleeting shadow, moving near the garage, then nothing. The police came. They found no one. He was still out there. Months passed. The constant fear began to fade into a dull, background hum. Then I got a call from the detective on my case. Tom Riley had been found dead in an abandoned cabin 50 miles away. They said he'd been watching me from a distance, using long-range cameras. It was over. For real this time? I sold the house on Maple Drive and moved to Seattle, hoping to lose myself in the noise and anonymity of a big city. For the first time in over a year, I felt something approaching normal. I felt safe. Then, one night, months after my move, I was unpacking the last of my boxers. Taped to the inside flap of one was a small, plain envelope. No name, no address. My hand started to shake as I opened it. Inside was a single photograph. It was of me, taken that very morning, sipping coffee in my new kitchen, from outside the window. I flipped it over. 3 words were written in neat, familiar handwriting. You forgot me. My breath caught in my throat. Outside I heard a car engine start and then drive away. I ran to the window, but the street was empty. There was nothing there but my own reflection in the dark glass, trembling, with the horrifying realization that the nightmare had never really ended. It had only just begun.